I was going to fake a medical emergency. That's where my mind had gone. Appendicitis, maybe. Something that required immediate hospital attention but wouldn't make me look like a complete coward for abandoning this disaster of a blind date. Across from me, Shauna was still talking. She'd been talking for 47 minutes straight. I knew the exact number because I'd been checking my watch every 90 seconds like a prisoner counting down to parole. Her voice had that particular pitch that somehow traveled directly into your skull and set up permanent residence. And I told him, I said, if you're not driving at least a Range Rover, don't even think about asking me out. I mean, what's the point? I have standards, you know? My followers expect me to maintain a certain lifestyle. My best friend Ryan had set this up. She's perfect for you, he'd said. Gorgeous, successful, knows what she wants. What Ryan had failed to mention was that what Shauna wanted was a walking bank account with the personality of an expensive car. The cafe around us buzzed with normal human conversation. Real couples laughed together. Friends shared stories. Meanwhile, I was trapped in what felt like a hostage situation, except the ransom was my sanity and nobody was coming to pay it. Subscribe now if you've ever been stuck somewhere you desperately wanted to escape. Drop a comment telling me about your worst date ever. Trust me, sharing the pain helps. I took another sip of coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. Shauna didn't notice. She was scrolling through her phone now, showing me photos of handbags that cost more than most people's monthly rent. This one is limited edition. Only 50 made worldwide. I'm on the wait list, but... She leaned forward, her perfume overwhelming in its intensity. A girl has to have connections, you know what I mean? I didn't know what she meant. I didn't want to know. I wanted to be anywhere else on planet Earth. That's when I noticed her. The woman sat one table over, tucked into the corner by the window. She wore a bright red blouse that somehow made her stand out without trying. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she had blueprints spread across her table, weighted down by a coffee mug and what looked like a calculator. She was studying the papers with intense concentration, occasionally making notes in the margins. Something about her pulled my attention. Maybe it was the contrast. While Shauna performed for an invisible audience, this woman seemed completely absorbed in whatever problem those blueprints represented. Her brow furrowed. She bit her lower lip. Then she sat back and pressed her palms against her eyes like someone trying to hold back either tears or a scream. I recognized that gesture. I'd made it myself plenty of times when my startup was failing and the bills kept coming. That was the physical manifestation of stress that had nowhere else to go. Are you even listening to me? Shauna's voice snapped my attention back. She looked offended, arms crossed, one perfectly manicured nail tapping against her designer sleeve. Sorry, I was just what? Looking at other women? She grabbed her purse, a statement piece that probably cost more than the entire cafe's monthly revenue. I'm going to the restroom. Try to be present when I get back. She stood in a huff, her heels clicking against the floor with aggressive precision. The moment she disappeared around the corner, I felt my shoulders drop with relief. Rough night? I turned. The woman in red was looking at me now, a slight smile playing at her lips. Up close, I could see the exhaustion in her eyes, but also something warmer. Understanding, maybe. That obvious? I said. I've been trying not to eavesdrop, but... She gestured around the small cafe. Thin walls. Also, you looked like you were planning an escape route through the kitchen. I laughed despite myself. Was considering the bathroom window, actually. Second floor. 20-foot drop. Not recommended. She said it so matter-of-factly that I laughed again. She glanced toward the restroom hallway, then back at me. Her expression shifted, became more serious. Listen, I don't usually do this, but you look like you could use a rescue. If you're free. She gestured to the empty chair across from her. Sit here. I stared at her for 3 full seconds. This woman, this complete stranger, was offering me a life raft. No games. No performance. Just a simple human kindness extended across the small space between our tables. I'm Devin, I said, already standing. Tony. She moved her blueprints aside to make room. Tony Wallace. Welcome to my cafe. That stopped me mid-sit. Your cafe. Lock, stock, and apparently multiple building code violations. She tapped the papers in front of her. Hence the midnight crisis planning session. I settled into the chair, feeling like I'd just stepped from a hurricane into calm waters. You own this place? 3 years now. Best decision and worst timing of my life. She pushed a menu toward me. Get something real to eat. You look like you've been sitting through a culinary hostage situation too. Before I could respond, I heard the click of heels. Shauna had emerged from the restroom, phone in hand, looking for our table. Her eyes landed on me, then on Tony, then narrowed with an expression I recognized instantly. She marched over. Seriously? I leave for 5 minutes and you're already trying to pick up the waitress? Actually, Tony said, her voice pleasant but firm, I own this cafe. And Devin was just accepting my invitation to join my table. Your table is over there. She pointed without looking away from Shauna. Feel free to finish your meal. On the house. Shauna's mouth opened and closed like a fish. For maybe the first time all evening she had no words. She looked at me, waiting for me to apologize or explain or beg her to stay. Thanks for meeting me tonight, Shauna, I said. I hope you find what you're looking for. She made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a growl, grabbed her designer purse and stormed toward the exit. The door chimed aggressively as she left. The cafe fell quiet for a moment. Then normal conversation resumed, as if dramatic blind date exits happened here every evening. That was... I started. Necessary, Tony finished. She slid a coffee cup toward me. Fresh brew. You looked like you needed it. I accepted it gratefully. The coffee was perfect. Rich without being bitter. Warm without burning. Everything the last hour hadn't been. So, Tony said, settling back in her chair, building code violations. Want to hear about my nightmare? Or should we start with why your friend set you up with someone so clearly wrong for you? Your nightmare sounds more interesting. That's because you haven't heard it yet. But she smiled when she said it. A real smile that reached her eyes. She turned the blueprints around so I could see them properly. 30 days ago, a building inspector named Gerald Hutchins came through here. Found 17 violations. Gave me 60 days to fix everything or lose my business license. I'm down to 30 days now and... She gestured at the papers. Half of these issues, I can't even figure out what he's talking about. I leaned forward, studying the inspection report. My architecture degree from a lifetime ago was suddenly relevant again. May I? Please. She pushed everything toward me. I've been staring at this so long the words don't make sense anymore. I started reading. The more I read, the more my frown deepened. Some of these citations are legitimate. Old wiring, outdated plumbing connections. But others... I tapped one section. This doesn't make sense. He's citing you for load-bearing wall modifications, but according to this blueprint, those walls aren't load-bearing. That's what I thought, but I'm not an expert. I bought this place from the previous owner, took over his lease and his headaches. She ran her hand over her face. I've put everything into this cafe. It's not just a business. It's where people come when they need a quiet place to work, or when they're having the worst day, or when they just need someone to make them decent coffee and not judge them. I heard the catch in her voice. This wasn't about building codes. This was about purpose. What if I helped you? The words came out before I'd fully formed the thought. Tony looked at me carefully. You don't even know me. No, but you just saved me from the worst evening of my year. Consider it payback. I gestured at the blueprints. I studied architecture before I switched to tech. Still remember enough to tell good citations from garbage ones. Let me look at your building tomorrow. I'll give you an honest assessment. Why would you do that? Because you invited me to sit here, I said simply. Because you saw someone who needed help and you offered it without asking for anything in return. That seems worth returning. She studied me for a long moment. I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. Weighing trust against desperation. Hope against the fear of being disappointed again. Okay, she said finally. Tomorrow. 10 o'clock. I'll show you everything. I'll be here. We spent the next 2 hours talking. Not the performed conversation of my failed date, but real exchange. She told me about buying the cafe on a hope and a prayer after working corporate catering for a decade. About her vision of creating a space that felt like community, not just commerce. About customers who'd become friends, and the regular who always sat in the corner writing poetry he never let anyone read. I told her about building my tech company from nothing, about the loneliness of success, about how Ryan meant well but had no idea what I actually needed in life. About missing the hands-on work of architecture, the satisfaction of building something physical that people could touch and use. When the cafe closed at 10, I helped her stack chairs and wipe down tables. It felt natural, working alongside her in comfortable silence. Thank you, she said as we stood at the door. For helping. For listening. For not being your date. Thank you for the rescue, I replied. See you at 10? 10 o'clock. She locked the door behind me. I walked to my car feeling lighter than I had in months. Not because of romance or attraction, though Tony was undeniably beautiful, but because I'd stumbled into something real. A person who built things and cared about people and needed help she was brave enough to accept. My phone buzzed. Text from Ryan, "How'd it go with Shauna?" I typed back, "Terrible date. Best night I've had in years." Long story. As I drove home through empty streets, I thought about Tony's blueprints, about problems that could be solved with knowledge and effort, about building something that mattered. I thought about the girl at the next table who'd offered me a chair and, without knowing it, offered me something I'd been missing. Purpose. I arrived at the cafe at exactly 10 o'clock carrying my old architecture textbooks, a laser measure, and a notebook I'd bought specifically for this project. Through the window I could see Tony setting up for the day. She wore a bright blue sweater today, her hair in the same practical ponytail. When she saw me, she broke into a smile that made the early morning wake-up worthwhile. "You actually came," she said, opening the door. Said I would. I held up my supplies. "Ready to figure out what we're dealing with?" She locked the door behind me and flipped the sign to "Opening at noon." I cleared my morning. "Show me what you see." We started with the inspection report laid out on the counter. I read each citation carefully, comparing it to the building's actual structure. "Okay, let's separate fact from fiction," I said, pulling out my notebook. Citation 1, outdated electrical panel. That's legitimate. Your box is probably from the 70s. It needs upgrading. Tony nodded, making notes. "How much?" $1,500, maybe $2,000 with labor. She winced but wrote it down. Citation 2, plumbing connections not to code. Also real. See these pipes under the sink? I opened the cabinet beneath her prep station. They're using old compression fittings. Should be soldered or PX. Not dangerous, but technically not current code. Cost. Few $100s. Easy fix. We went through each citation. About half were legitimate issues, things that had been grandfathered in when the previous owner ran the place but couldn't pass inspection now. The other half were questionable at best. This one. I tapped citation 12. Load-bearing wall modification without permit. Where exactly did he cite this? Tony led me to the back wall, the one separating the main cafe from the storage area. He said this wall was modified illegally. I studied it carefully, running my hands along the surface, checking the corners and ceiling junction. Then I pulled out the original blueprints Tony had gotten during the purchase. "This wall isn't load-bearing," I said. "See how it runs perpendicular to the floor joists? It's partition only. And according to these blueprints, it's been exactly like this since the building was constructed in 1985. So he made it up? Or he doesn't know how to read blueprints?" I took photos with my phone documenting everything. Either way, this citation is wrong. Tony's expression shifted from worry to anger. Why would he do that? Good question. I moved to the next citation. Let's see what else doesn't add up. We spent 3 hours going through every inch of the cafe. I measured, photographed, compared to code books, and documented everything. Tony followed, taking notes, asking questions, bringing me coffee when I got absorbed in calculating load distributions. By noon I had a clear picture. "Here's the truth," I said, spreading my notes across a table. "You have 8 legitimate violations. 6 are minor, 2 are more serious. Total cost to fix everything, around $8,000, maybe 10 with permits and labor." "That's actually less than I feared," Tony said. "But here's the problem." I showed her the other citations. 9 of his 17 violations are either wrong or exaggerated. That's more than half. Either this inspector is incompetent or he's targeting you specifically. Tony sat back, her coffee cup cradled in both hands. "There's something I didn't mention last night." I waited. "Gerald Hutchins came in here about 4 months ago. Ordered coffee, seemed nice enough. Then he asked me out. She met my eyes. I said no. Politely but clearly. He didn't take it well. Everything clicked into place. He came back as an inspector. 5 weeks after I turned him down. Suddenly my cafe that passed inspection 2 years ago has 17 violations." Her voice was steady, but I could hear the anger underneath. I looked into it. He's not even the regular inspector for this district. He volunteered to cover someone's vacation. That's harassment. That's my word against his. He has the badge and the citations. I have. She gestured around her cafe. And 30 days to fix problems, real or imagined, or lose everything. I felt my jaw clench. I dealt with my share of people who abused small amounts of power. It always made my blood pressure rise. "Okay," I said. "Here's what we do. We fix every legitimate violation perfectly. Better than code requires. We document everything with photos and permits. And we prepare detailed rebuttals for every false citation with evidence he's wrong. That's a lot of work. Yes. And expensive. I'll cover the materials, I said. Consider it an investment in justice. Tony shook her head. I can't let you do that. You barely know me. I know you run a cafe that matters to people. I know you were kind to a stranger having the worst date of his life. I know you're fighting to protect something you built. I met her eyes. That's enough to know. Let me help. She studied me for a long moment. I could see her weighing pride against practicality, independence against need. Why? She asked quietly. Really why? I thought about how to answer that. I spent the last 5 years building a tech company. Made good money. But I haven't built anything real, anything physical in years. I miss it. This. I gestured at the cafe, at the blueprints, at the problem we could actually solve. This is real. Let me help you save it. Tony's eyes were bright. Not with tears exactly, but with something close. If I accept this is a partnership. You don't just hand me money and disappear. You help me figure this out step by step. Deal. And I pay you back. Maybe not fast, but eventually. We can talk about that later. Right now, we focus on fixing everything before your deadline. She extended her hand. Partners. I shook it. Her grip was firm, certain. Partners. We spent the rest of the afternoon making plans. I called contractors I knew from my architecture days, got quotes, scheduled work. Tony coordinated around her cafe hours, arranged for reduced operations during construction. We start Monday, I said, checking my notes. Electrical first, then plumbing. The walls and structural work can happen simultaneously. If we push hard, we can have everything done in 3 weeks. That's cutting it close to my deadline. Leaves a week buffer for inspections and any unexpected problems. Tony looked at the schedule I'd drawn up. This is really happening. This is really happening. She smiled then, full and genuine. I need to open up for the afternoon rush. Thank you, Devin. Seriously. You didn't have to do any of this. Yes, I did, I said simply. As I gathered my materials to leave, Tony called out. Hey, Devin. Your terrible date? Shauna? She grinned. Best thing that ever happened to my cafe. I laughed. I'll be sure to thank her if I ever see her again. Please don't. She might come back. I left feeling energized in a way I hadn't felt in years. This was problem solving with stakes, with meaning, with a person who genuinely cared about the outcome. Not shuffling money in apps or optimizing user interfaces. Real work that mattered. That evening, I sat in my apartment reviewing everything we'd discussed. I made detailed lists, ordered materials, scheduled deliveries. My phone rang around 8. It's Tony. Is this too late to call? Not at all. What's up? I was thinking about what you said. About this being a partnership. She paused. I want to be clear about something. I'm accepting your help because I genuinely need it and because you're offering it freely. But I'm not. This isn't. You're worried I have ulterior motives. Men don't usually offer to spend thousands of dollars on women they just met without expecting something in return. I understood her concern. It was valid, smart even. I'm helping because it's the right thing to do. Because your cafe matters and because I can help save it. That's the only motive. If something else develops between us naturally, great. If not, also great. The help isn't conditional on anything except you letting me do it. She was quiet for a moment. Okay, I believe you. I just needed to hear it said out loud. Anytime you need clarity, ask. I promise to be honest. Same goes for me. This works both ways. After we hung up, I realized I was smiling. Not because of potential romance, though Tony was undeniably attractive, but because this felt like the beginning of something genuine. A friendship built on mutual respect and shared purpose. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Still waiting for that long story about your date. I typed back, met someone interesting. Helping her save her cafe. Feels good to build something again. Ryan, wait, you're seeing someone new? Me, not like that. Just helping a friend. Ryan, sure. That's how it always starts. I set my phone down, not bothering to argue. Ryan would understand eventually. Or he wouldn't. Either way, I knew what this was. A chance to do something meaningful. To use skills I'd abandoned for more profitable work. To help someone who deserved help. Monday couldn't come fast enough. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and a forecast calling for rain. I met the electrical contractor at the cafe at 7, an hour before Tony usually opened. She'd given me a key over the weekend, trusting me with access to her business. Miguel Torres, the electrician, surveyed the main panel with a practiced eye. He was in his 50s, wearing a bright green work shirt, someone I'd hired for multiple projects during my architecture days. "This panel is older than my kids," Miguel said, shaking his head. "You're replacing the whole thing, right? Everything to current code. Better than current code if possible." "Smart. This inspection giving you trouble?" "Something like that." Miguel nodded knowingly. "Had a client last year, inspector kept finding new problems every visit. Turned out the guy was trying to shut down competition for his brother's restaurant. Some people abused the badge." The door chimed. Tony entered carrying 2 coffee thermoses and a bag from the bakery down the street. She wore jeans and a bright red t-shirt, hair tied back, ready for work. "Figured you'd both need caffeine and sustenance," she said, distributing coffee and pastries. "Miguel, right? Devin told me you're the best." Miguel accepted the coffee gratefully. "He exaggerates, but I appreciate it. We'll have your panel upgraded by end of day. Place won't even lose power for more than 20 minutes. You're a miracle worker." "Nah, just prepared. Devin here taught me that back when he was still in the architecture game." Miguel clapped my shoulder. "Kid was always 3 steps ahead of everyone else." Tony looked at me with raised eyebrows. "You didn't mention you were some kind of prodigy." "Wasn't. Just organized." "He's modest too," Miguel laughed. "Let me get started. You two probably have other things to check." While Miguel worked on the electrical system, Tony and I moved to the back of the cafe. The inspection report had cited issues with the rear patio, and I wanted to examine it in daylight. The patio was a small outdoor space, maybe 15 by 20 feet, elevated about 3 feet off the ground. It had been a selling point when Tony bought the place, a spot for customers to sit outside in good weather. I knelt down to examine the support structure underneath. What I saw made my stomach sink. "Tony, come look at this." She crouched beside me. I pointed to the main support beams. They were old wood, showing significant rot where they met the concrete footings. Worse, I could see where someone had tried to patch over the damage with wood filler and paint. "Is that bad?" Tony asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. "This is dangerous." I pulled out my phone's flashlight, examining further. "These beams are compromised. The previous owner covered it up instead of fixing it. If this collapses while someone's out here, people could get hurt. Seriously hurt." I stood, brushing dirt off my knees. "This wasn't in the inspector's report. Because it's hidden under the deck." Tony's voice was tight. "Hutchins never actually inspected the structure. He just cited it for code violations about railing height." I walked the perimeter of the patio, testing boards, checking connections. The more I looked, the worse it got. This wasn't a simple repair. This was a complete rebuild. "How much?" Tony asked quietly. I did quick calculations in my head. Materials, labor, permits, time. 5,000 minimum. Probably closer to 7 with proper footings and weather treatment. Tony sat down on one of the patio chairs. It creaked ominously under her weight. She stood up quickly. "I don't have $7,000, she said. "I barely have the 8 we talked about Friday." "I'll cover it." "Devin, no. You're already paying for too much." I sat on the patio steps, careful to distribute my weight. "Here's the thing. This isn't about Hutchins or his citations anymore. This is about safety. If someone gets hurt because we knew about this problem and didn't fix it, we'd never forgive ourselves." "We?" She smiled sadly. "You're very good at that. Making my problems ours. Isn't that what partners do?" She looked out at the small patio, at the space where she'd hosted summer evening events and morning yoga classes. This cafe was supposed to be my dream. Independence, creativity, community. Instead it's turning into a money pit that's swallowing everything I have and demanding more. I heard the exhaustion in her voice. Not just physical tiredness, but the deeper weariness of someone who'd been fighting too long alone. "Can I be honest?" I asked. "Please." "This cafe is incredible. I've watched you interact with customers. The college kid studying for exams who you give free refills to. The elderly couple who comes in every Tuesday and you know their order before they speak. The young mom who brings her baby in and you hold him while she eats with both hands for once." I gestured around. "You've built something rare. A place that actually matters to people's daily lives. That's worth saving." Tony's eyes were bright. "Even if it's expensive?" "Especially then. Easy things don't need saving." She laughed, a sound between amusement and tears. "You're either the kindest person I've ever met or the worst business person. Probably both." We sat in silence for a moment, listening to Miguel work inside, the sounds of progress and repair. Okay, Tony said finally. We rebuild the patio. Properly. But I'm keeping track of every dollar. When this place is successful, when I'm making real profit, I pay you back. All of it. Deal. But only because I know arguing with you is pointless. Smart man. We spent the rest of the morning planning the patio demolition. I called Jamie Chin, a contractor I'd worked with before who specialized in deck work. She could start Wednesday and promised to have it done in a week. By noon, Miguel had the new electrical panel installed. The cafe had updated power, proper circuit breakers, and everything documented with permits and photos. One down, Tony said, surveying the new panel with satisfaction. Several to go, I added. She opened the cafe for lunch service. I stayed to help, bussing tables, refilling coffee, learning the rhythm of her business. It was strangely satisfying, the simple work of serving people what they needed. Around 2, during a lull, Tony brought me a sandwich she'd made in the back. Eat, she ordered. You've been working since 7. So have you. I'm used to it. You're not. She sat across from me. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you really leave architecture? I set down my sandwich thinking about how to answer. I was good at it. Really good. But it was slow. Every project took years from concept to completion. I wanted to build things faster, see results quicker. Tech offered that. Do you regret it? I regret losing touch with physical building. Creating something people can touch and use and exist inside. Tech is abstract. Code is invisible. This. I gestured around the cafe. This is real. Is that why you're helping me? Nostalgia for what you left behind. Maybe partly. But mostly because you deserved help and I could give it. That's enough reason. Tony smiled. My mom used to say the world needs more people who help just because they can. She'd like you. Used to. She passed 3 years ago. Cancer. Tony's voice stayed steady. The cafe was her dream originally. We used to talk about opening one together. When she got sick, we spent hours planning it, designing menus, imagining the space. After she died, I used my inheritance to make it real. So this isn't just a business. This is my promise to her. That her dreams mattered. That I could build something lasting from what she taught me. Tony looked around her cafe with fierce love. That's why I can't let it fail. Not because of money or inspections or creeps who abuse their authority. She deserves better. I understood then why Tony fought so hard, why she accepted help despite her pride, why every detail mattered. This cafe was love made manifest. We won't let it fail, I said. Your mom's dream stays real. Tony reached across the table and squeezed my hand briefly. Thank you for understanding. The afternoon passed in productive work. Plumbers arrived to address the pipe issues. I coordinated deliveries for the patio rebuild. Tony served customers and managed her business with practiced efficiency. Around closing time, we stood in the back looking at the patio one last time before demolition started. I used to sit out here with my mom, Tony said softly. When we were planning all this, she'd bring her notebook and sketch ideas. Terrible sketches, but beautiful ideas. What would she think of the cafe now? She'd love it. The community, the regulars, the chaos of morning rush. Tony smiled. She'd also probably lecture me about accepting help from handsome strangers. I felt my face warm. Handsome. Don't let it go to your head. You're maybe a 7. A 7? I helped you escape a terrible date and I'm fixing your building. Fine. 7.5. We laughed, the tension of the day releasing into genuine amusement. As we locked up, I realized how comfortable we'd become around each other. 3 days ago we were strangers. Now we moved around each other naturally, finished each other's sentences, communicated in shorthand. Same time tomorrow? Tony asked. I'll bring breakfast. You're definitely an 8 now. I drove home that evening feeling the good kind of tired. Physical work, meaningful progress, genuine connection. The hidden damage to the patio was serious but fixable. Everything was fixable with enough effort and care. My phone showed messages from work colleagues wondering where I'd been. I'd been ignoring my startup for 3 days, delegating everything to my capable team. They could manage. This mattered more. I fell asleep reviewing construction schedules and woke up eager to get back to the cafe. Back to building something real. Back to Tony. Wednesday morning, Jamie Chin arrived with her crew at dawn. I met them at the cafe with coffee and a detailed plan for the patio rebuild. Jamie wore a bright yellow hard hat and work boots that had seen serious use. This is worse than you described, Jamie said after inspecting the existing structure. Whoever patched this over should lose their contractor's license. Can you fix it? Can I fix it? Devin, I'm offended. She grinned. I can make this patio better than new. Give me a week. Demolition started with the satisfying sound of rotted wood being torn away. Tony arrived an hour later, watching her patio disappear with mixed emotions. Feels destructive, she said. Destruction is the first step of building something better, Jamie called out, overhearing. Trust the process. While Jamie's crew worked outside, I focused on the interior citations. The plumbing was upgraded, the ancient water heater replaced with an efficient model, minor electrical fixes completed throughout. Each task checked off brought us closer to inspection readiness. Tony kept the cafe running through all of it, somehow maintaining normal service despite construction chaos. I watched her navigate complicated orders, soothe frustrated customers dealing with noise, and keep her staff motivated during the disruption. You're amazing at this, I told her during a brief afternoon lull. At what? Crisis management. At making people feel taken care of even when everything's chaotic. That's a rare skill. She wiped down the counter, hiding a pleased smile. My mom taught me that. She said hospitality isn't about perfection. It's about making people feel welcome despite imperfection. Over the next few days we fell into a routine. I arrived early to coordinate contractors. Tony opened the cafe and managed operations. We'd share lunch together, reviewing progress and planning next steps. Evenings, after closing, we'd stay late documenting everything for the final inspection. On Friday, Jamie's crew poured new concrete footings for the patio. Watching fresh concrete settle into perfect forms felt deeply satisfying, like laying foundation for something permanent. This will outlast both of us, Jamie said, surveying her work. Properly done, these footings support a 2-story structure. Your patio could hold a dance party. Maybe we'll do that, Tony said. After we pass inspection. You'll pass. This is textbook perfect. That evening, Tony and I sat inside reviewing receipts and permits. Every expense was documented, every repair photographed from multiple angles. We were building an undeniable case that her cafe exceeded every code requirement. $14,000, Tony said, looking at the total. That's what you've spent. Investment, not expense. Investment in what? A cafe that might not survive another year? I looked up from my laptop. Investment in you. In what you're building. In proving that people who abuse power don't get to win. Tony was quiet for a moment. I'm going to pay you back. Every cent. I know. Even if it takes years. I know that too. She smiled. You're very trusting for a tech entrepreneur. Only with people who deserve trust. The following Monday, Jamie completed the patio structure. New pressure-treated lumber on engineered footings, properly flashed and sealed. The deck was level, solid, and absolutely beautiful. Final touches tomorrow, Jamie said. Railings, stairs, ceiling. Then you can put furniture back out. Tony walked the empty deck, testing every board. Nothing creaked. Nothing shifted. It feels permanent. Because it is, Jamie said. This deck will be here when your grandkids take over the cafe. After Jamie left, Tony and I stood on the new patio watching the sunset. The space felt transformed, solid and safe and ready for community. You know what I'm realizing? Tony said. This whole crisis, as terrible as it's been, brought something good. It brought you. I felt warmth spread through my chest. Brought me? You showed up at the perfect moment. Not just with money or skills, but with actual care about what happens here. She turned to face me. That's rare. People usually want something in return. You just keep giving. Maybe I'm getting something too, I said. Purpose. Connection. The satisfaction of building something that matters. Is that all you're getting? The question hung between us. I knew what she was asking. Whether this was still just partnership and friendship or if it was becoming something else. I like you, Tony, I said carefully. As a person. As a friend. Maybe as more than a friend. But I meant what I said. The help isn't conditional on anything. If you just want partnership, that's genuinely fine. She stepped closer. What if I want more than partnership? My heart rate increased. Then we'd need to figure out what that looks like. Slowly. Carefully. Making sure we don't mess up what we're building here. Very sensible answer. You sound disappointed. Little bit. But she was smiling. I was hoping for something more romantic. Romance is overrated. Partnership is better. What if we could have both? Before I could answer, my phone rang. The contractor handling the interior painting. I answered reluctantly, coordinating tomorrow's schedule while Tony watched with amusement. When I hung up, she was grinning. Saved by the contractor. We should probably talk about this, I said. We will. After inspection. After we know the cafe is safe. Then we can figure out this. She gestured between us. That's very sensible. I know. I'm disappointing myself. We laughed, the tension breaking into something comfortable again. Whatever was developing between us could wait. The cafe came first. Tuesday, the interior painting finished. Fresh paint covered old stains, making the space feel renewed. Wednesday, I installed new lighting fixtures, bringing warmth and brightness to every corner. Thursday, Jamie added railings to the patio, completing the transformation. Friday morning, I stood in the cafe at dawn, reviewing my complete documentation. Every repair was logged, photographed, and permitted. Every citation was addressed with evidence and expertise. We were ready. Tony arrived with 2 coffees and an expression I couldn't read. What's wrong? I asked. Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. That's what's terrifying. She handed me a coffee. We've done everything possible. The cafe is better than when I bought it. Better than code requires. If Hutchins still finds violations, then we fight them with evidence. But I don't think he will. He'd have to explain why his citations were wrong. You have a lot of faith in the system. I have faith in documentation. We've built an airtight case. She sat down, suddenly looking exhausted. Can I tell you something? Always. I'm scared. Not just of losing the cafe but of what happens after. If we pass inspection, if everything works out, then what? You go back to your regular life. I run my cafe. This. She gestured around at our shared work. This ends. I sat across from her. Why would it end? Because you helped me solve my crisis. Crisis over, no more reason for you to be here every day. What if I want to be here every day? Why would you want that? Because these have been the best 2 weeks I've had in 5 years. Because I wake up excited to see what we'll accomplish. Because working with you feels right. I reached across and took her hand. The crisis brought us together, but it doesn't have to be what keeps us together. Tony's eyes were bright. What keeps us together then? Choice. Choosing to keep building something even after the emergency passes. You'd choose that. Already am. She squeezed my hand. Okay. Then after inspection, after we celebrate, we figure out what this is. We build something on purpose instead of by accident. Deal. We spent that afternoon preparing for Monday's final inspection. Every surface cleaned, every repair visible and documented. The cafe gleamed. Saturday and Sunday passed in a blur of final preparations. Monday morning arrived with anxiety and hope in equal measure. At 9 o'clock, Inspector Gerald Hutchins arrived for the final inspection. He looked surprised to see me standing beside Tony. Ms. Wallace, he said coolly. Mr. Park. Devin Park. I extended my hand. He shook it reluctantly. I've been consulting on the repairs. Everything's documented and ready for your inspection. Hutchins' expression flickered. He'd expected Tony to be struggling, unprepared, easy to fail. Instead, he found organization and confidence. Let's see what you've done, he said. We walked him through every repair. The new electrical panel with permits and inspection certificates. The updated plumbing with documentation. The rebuilt patio with engineering specifications and load calculations. I had a folder 3 inches thick with photos, receipts, permits, and code references. For every citation he'd written, I had proof of correction. For every false citation, I had evidence of his error. Hutchins' face grew increasingly tight as we proceeded. He tested everything looking for any flaw. He found nothing. On the patio, he spent extra time checking the structure. Jamie's work was perfect. He couldn't find a single issue. The railings are higher than code requires, he noted. Yes, I agreed. We exceeded minimum requirements throughout. Safer that way. He looked at me sharply. You have architecture training? Degree from state. Worked in the field for several years before moving to tech. Something shifted in his expression. He'd realized Tony wasn't alone anymore. She had someone who understood codes, who couldn't be intimidated with technical jargon. You've read this far, which means you're invested in this story. Subscribe now so you don't miss how this ends. Comment below. Have you ever stood up to someone abusing their power? Tell me about it. After 2 hours, Hutchins completed his inspection. He filled out forms in silence while Tony and I watched. Everything appears to be in order, he said finally, not meeting our eyes. Your violations have been addressed. I'm marking this as past inspection. Thank you, Tony said, her voice steady despite obvious relief. Hutchins handed her the signed certificate. If there are any future issues, they'll be handled by the regular district inspector. I'm transferring to a different zone. That's probably for the best, I said evenly. He left without another word. The door chimed behind him, and suddenly it was just Tony and me standing in her cafe with a past inspection certificate. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Tony let out a sound between a laugh and a sob and threw her arms around me. I held her tight, feeling the tension of weeks drain out of both of us. We did it, she whispered. You did it? I just helped. We did it together. She pulled back, her face radiant despite tears. Thank you. For everything. For believing this was worth saving. It was always worth saving. She kissed me then, quick and impulsive and perfect. Then she stepped back, looking surprised at herself. Sorry, Don't apologize. I pulled her close again. We're past pretending this is just partnership. Way past, she agreed. We spent the rest of the day celebrating. Tony opened the cafe and announced the news to regular customers. Someone brought champagne. Someone else brought a cake. The celebration spilled onto the new patio, proving it could indeed hold a dance party. I stood back watching Tony in her element, surrounded by community she'd built, radiating joy and relief. She caught my eye across the patio and smiled, a smile that said we did this together and we're not done building yet. Jamie found me by the railing. You two going to figure your situation out? Working on it. Good. Tony deserves someone who shows up. She clapped my shoulder. You show up. Keep doing that. As the sun set on the celebration, Tony and I found ourselves alone on the patio again, right where this had started to shift from partnership into something more. So, she said, what happens now? Now we figure out what we're building next, I replied. Besides the cafe? Besides the cafe. She leaned against the railing, looking out at the small space we transformed together. I like the sound of that. Me too. We stayed there until stars appeared, talking about the future in a way that felt like plans, like promises, like the beginning of something built on choice instead of crisis. Like partnership becoming more. 2 weeks after passing inspection, life at the cafe settled into a new rhythm. I still came every morning, but now I was helping Tony run the business rather than fix it. We'd fallen into an easy partnership, both professional and personal, though we'd been taking things slow. Slow, in this case, meant stolen kisses in the back kitchen, holding hands while reviewing invoices, and long evenings talking after closing. Neither of us was rushing toward definition, content to let things develop naturally. Tuesday morning, I arrived to find Tony in a bright green sweater, setting up for the day. She smiled when she saw me, the kind of smile that made early mornings worthwhile. I brought bagels from that place you like, I said, holding up the bag. You're trying to win favorite person status. Is it working? You're currently tied with Mrs. Patterson, who brings me flowers every Friday. I'll have to step up my game. We were settling in to eat when the door chimed. A man in his 30s entered wearing an official badge and carrying a tablet. My stomach sank. Tony Wallace? He asked. That's me, Tony said, her smile fading. Philip Morrison, City Building Department. I'm here for a routine follow-up inspection. We passed inspection 2 weeks ago, I said. I'm aware. This is standard procedure after major repairs. Just confirming everything remains in compliance. He smiled pleasantly. Shouldn't take long. Tony and I exchanged glances. This felt wrong, but we couldn't refuse a legitimate inspection. Of course, Tony said. Where would you like to start? Morrison was thorough but professional. He checked everything we'd repaired, took photos, made notes on his tablet. Unlike Hutchins, he actually knew what he was looking at. The patio work is excellent, he said, examining Jamie's construction. Well above code requirements. We wanted to do it right, I said. It shows. He made a final note. Everything looks good. I'll file my report today. You should have official documentation by end of week. After he left, Tony sagged against the counter. I thought we were done with inspections. He said it was routine. Nothing about this feels routine. She looked worried. What if they keep coming back? What if every inspector decides to scrutinize us? Then we keep showing them perfect work, I said. We've done everything right. They can't manufacture problems that don't exist. But over the next week, 3 more officials showed up. Fire marshal checking extinguisher placement. Health inspector reviewing kitchen procedures. Zoning compliance verifying our business license matched our operations. Each inspection found nothing wrong. Each inspector seemed slightly disappointed by our perfect compliance. "They're trying to intimidate you," I said after the fourth visit. "Making you feel watched, hoping you'll slip up somewhere." "What? Hutchins is gone. What's the point? Maybe he filed complaints before he left. Or maybe someone in the department doesn't like that you fought back." I pulled up my laptop. "I'm going to make a complaint with the Inspector General's office. This is harassment." "Will that make it worse?" "Possibly. But we can't let them think this is okay." Tony was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Do it. My mom didn't raise me to back down from bullies." I filed a detailed complaint, documenting every inspection since Hutchins, the excessive frequency, and the lack of legitimate cause. I requested an investigation into whether Tony's cafe was being targeted. The next day, Hutchins himself showed up. I was in the back reviewing inventory when I heard Tony's voice, tight and controlled. I came out to find Hutchins standing in the cafe, no uniform, no badge, just showing up as a customer. "Just wanted to see how the place was doing," he said, looking around. "Heard you passed your final inspection." "We did. Thank you for your concern." Tony's voice was ice. "Can I get you anything?" "Coffee. Black." I stepped up beside Tony. "Actually, we reserve the right to refuse service." "You should leave." Hutchins looked at me, his expression hardening. "I'm a paying customer. You're a former inspector who created false violations to harass the owner after she rejected your advances. That's not a customer. That's a legal problem." His face flushed. "You can't prove that." "I documented everything. Every citation you wrote, evidence showing which ones were fabricated, and the timeline showing they all appeared 5 weeks after Ms. Wallace declined your invitation to dinner." I pulled out my phone. "I can call my lawyer right now if you want to discuss it further." Several regular customers had stopped talking, watching the confrontation. Hutchins looked around, realizing he had an audience. "This isn't over," he muttered. "Yes, it is," Tony said firmly. "Leave now or I'm calling the police for trespassing." He left, slamming the door. The bell chimed angrily in his wake. The cafe erupted in conversation. Multiple customers offered support. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman who brought flowers, stood up. "I've been coming here 3 years, she announced to the room. "Tony has never been anything but kind and professional to everyone. If that man is harassing her, we should all file complaints." Other regulars agreed. By end of day, 7 customers had submitted statements to the Inspector General's office describing the excessive inspections and Hutchins' inappropriate behavior. That evening, after closing, Tony and I sat in the empty cafe. She looked exhausted, drained by the constant pressure. "I thought passing inspection would end this," she said. "Instead it feels like it's getting worse." "It's going to get worse before it gets better," I said honestly. "We challenged someone who abused power. He's going to push back. Maybe I should have just paid him off. Or agreed to a date. Made it go away quietly." "No." I took her hand. "You did the right thing. Standing up to abuse is always right, even when it's hard." "You sound very certain." "I am certain. Because if you'd given in, he'd still have power over you. Still be able to demand things. This way it ends." She squeezed my hand. "I'm glad you're here. I don't think I could do this alone." "You're not alone." My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Mr. Park? This is Detective Andrea Collins with the City Police. I'm investigating complaints filed regarding harassment and official misconduct at Wallace's Cafe. Can you and Ms. Wallace come to the station tomorrow for an interview?" I put the phone on speaker. "We can do that. What time?" 10 o'clock? This shouldn't take long. Just collecting statements." After I hung up, Tony looked at me with wide eyes. "The police are investigating? That's good. Means they're taking this seriously. Or it means Hutchins filed charges against us for something. We haven't done anything wrong. Whatever he claims, we have documentation proving otherwise." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept reviewing everything in my mind, making sure we hadn't missed anything, that there was no angle Hutchins could use against us. Around midnight, Tony called. "Can't sleep either?" I asked. "I keep thinking about my mom. She always said doing the right thing doesn't guarantee easy consequences. Just guarantees you can live with yourself." Tony's voice was soft. "I'm trying to remember that. Your mom was wise. She was. She'd like you, you know. She'd say you're exactly the kind of person who shows up when it matters." "Is that what I am?" "Yeah. You're someone who shows up." We talked for an hour, not about the investigation or the cafe, just about life. Childhoods and dreams and favorite foods and terrible movies we secretly loved. By the time we hung up, I felt calmer. The next morning, we arrived at the police station together. Detective Collins was a woman in her 40s wearing a purple blazer, with an expression that suggested she'd heard every story twice. "Thank you for coming," she said, leading us to an interview room. "I want to be clear, you're not under investigation. We're investigating the pattern of inspections and Mr. Hutchins' conduct." Over the next hour, we walked her through everything. The blind date, Hutchins showing up as inspector, the false citations, the excessive follow-up inspections. I provided my documentation, including the technical analysis showing which violations were legitimate and which were fabricated. Detective Collins took detailed notes. "This is helpful. Very thorough documentation, Mr. Park. I was trained as an architect. Documentation is habit. Lucky for Ms. Wallace." She turned to Tony. "How has this affected your business?" "I've spent $14,000 on repairs, some necessary, some probably avoidable if the previous owner hadn't hidden problems. I've lost sleep, lost peace of mind, and spent 2 months terrified I'd lose everything I've built." Tony's voice stayed steady. "But the worst part is feeling watched constantly. Like I can't make any mistake or someone will use it against me." "That's going to stop," Detective Collins said firmly. "Based on what you've shown me, there's clear evidence of abuse of authority. At minimum, Hutchins will face disciplinary action. Possibly criminal charges if the DA decides to pursue it." "What about the other inspectors?" I asked. "The ones who've shown up in the last 2 weeks? I'll be contacting each one, verifying their visits were legitimate and properly scheduled. If they were sent as retaliation, that's a separate violation." As we left the station, Tony grabbed my arm. "Do you think this is really almost over?" "I think we're at the point where it gets resolved one way or another. Either they back off or we take it to court." "You'd really go to court over this?" "Absolutely. Wouldn't you?" She thought about it. "Yeah, I would. For the cafe, for my mom's dream, for every other small business owner who gets bullied by people with badges." We drove back to the cafe in comfortable silence. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. That afternoon was busy with lunch rush. I helped Tony serve customers, learning the rhythm of cafe work. It was satisfying in a way my tech work never was. Immediate results, grateful customers, tangible product. Around 3, a woman in her 20s entered wearing a reporter's badge. "Tony Wallace? I'm Jennifer Rodriguez from the City Tribune. I'm doing a story on small business owners dealing with excessive regulatory oversight. Would you be willing to talk?" Tony looked at me. I nodded slightly. Public attention might help or hurt, but silence definitely wouldn't help. "What do you want to know?" Tony asked. Over coffee, Tony told her story. Not just about Hutchins, but about building a cafe from nothing, about community and dreams and fighting to protect what matters. Jennifer took notes, asked thoughtful questions, and seemed genuinely interested. "This is exactly the kind of story people need to hear," Jennifer said. "Small business owner refuses to be intimidated, stands up for what's right." "Can I quote you saying that?" "Quote me saying whatever helps other people in similar situations," Tony said. "If someone's reading this who's being harassed or intimidated, I want them to know fighting back is possible." The article ran 3 days later. Local cafe owner fights back against inspector harassment, with a photo of Tony on her new patio. The story was fair, detailed, and damning of the inspection department's failures. Response was immediate. Other business owners called with similar stories. Local politicians promised investigations. Social media erupted with support. And Gerald Hutchins was officially suspended pending investigation. That evening, Tony and I stood on the patio watching sunset, exhausted but relieved. "It's really over, isn't it?" she said. "The crisis part, yes. Now we get to figure out what comes next." She turned to face me. "What do you want to come next?" "I want to keep showing up here every morning. Keep having coffee with you. Keep being part of what you're building." "Just the cafe?" "Not just the cafe." I pulled her close. "You. Whatever this is becoming." "What is this becoming?" "Something real. Something chosen. Something worth protecting as much as the cafe." She kissed me then, long and certain, like sealing a promise. "Okay," she said when we broke apart. "Let's build that next." 3 weeks after the article ran, life at the cafe had returned to something like normal. The Inspector General's office had completed their investigation, finding clear evidence of harassment and abuse of authority. Hutchins had been terminated. 3 other inspectors had received disciplinary action for their roles in the excessive follow-up visits. Tony had become something of a local hero to small business owners. The publicity had actually increased her customer base, bringing in people who wanted to support someone who'd stood up to bureaucratic bullying. "I should send Hutchins a thank you card," Tony joked one morning. "His harassment doubled my revenue." "Please don't." He'd probably try to frame it as a bribe. Things between us had deepened too. We were officially together now, though we hadn't made any big public announcement. Just gradually shifted from business partners who maybe like each other, to couple who also runs a cafe together. It felt natural, inevitable even. Like we'd been heading toward this from the moment she'd invited me to sit at her table. Thursday afternoon, dark clouds rolled in. The weather forecast called for severe thunderstorms, possibly the worst of the season. Tony closed early, sending staff home before the weather hit. "You should probably head out too," she said, watching the sky darken. "No point both of us getting soaked. I'll help you close up properly. Secure everything." We worked together, bringing in the outdoor furniture, securing the new patio umbrellas, checking that windows were properly sealed. The wind picked up as we worked, sending leaves skittering across the patio. By 6 o'clock, the storm hit with startling force. Rain pounded against the windows. Wind howled around the building. Lightning split the sky in brilliant white cracks. "Maybe I should stay until this passes," I said, looking at the deluge outside. "Probably smart." Tony made us coffee and we settled at a table to wait it out. The storm intensified. The power flickered once, twice, then held. We could hear branches hitting the building, debris flying past windows. "I hate storms," Tony admitted. "They feel so out of control." "Your building's solid. We're safe here." Around 7, there was an enormous crack of thunder followed immediately by a tremendous crash from the back of the building. The lights went out. We both jumped up. I grabbed my phone for light and we ran toward the back. Through the kitchen window we could see what had happened. A large branch from the old oak tree behind the cafe had broken off and fallen directly onto the new patio. In the phone's light I could see crushed railing and what looked like structural damage to one corner of the deck. "No," Tony whispered. No, not the patio. Not after everything we just fixed." The storm was too severe to go outside. We could only watch through the window as rain pounded the damaged structure. Tony sank to the floor, back against the wall. I sat beside her, putting my arm around her shoulders. "I'm cursed," she said. "This place is cursed." "It's not cursed. It's a storm. Bad timing, but just weather. First the hidden rot, then Hutchins, now this. Maybe the universe is telling me this cafe isn't meant to work. Or maybe you're being tested, and every time you prove you're strong enough to handle it." She leaned against me. "I'm tired of being tested." "I know." We sat in the dark listening to the storm rage outside. At some point, Tony's breathing changed and I realized she was crying quietly. "Hey," I said softly. "We'll fix this too." "With what money?" I barely recovered from the last repairs. "Insurance won't cover storm damage to new construction. I can't ask you to pay for another rebuild." "You're not asking. I'm offering." "Devin, no. You've already spent more than $15,000 saving this place. I can't keep taking from you." "It's not taking if I'm giving freely." "That's exactly what it is." She pulled away, wiping her eyes. "You've been so generous, so kind, so present through all of this. But I can't build my dream on your bank account. That's not sustainable." I heard what she wasn't saying. That accepting my help was starting to feel like dependence. That she needed to know she could maintain this cafe on her own merit. "What if we think of it differently?" I said. "Not me helping you, but us building something together. Partners in the real sense." "You want to own part of the cafe?" "I want to be invested in its success. Financially and emotionally and personally. Not as a donor, but as a partner." She was quiet, thinking. "That would mean sharing decisions. Sharing control." "It would." "Can you do that?" "I don't know. This cafe is my mom's dream. Can I share that with someone else?" "Your mom would want you to succeed, right? Even if that means accepting help?" Tony laughed sadly. "She'd probably say I'm being too proud." She was always more practical than me. The storm started to ease around 8. The rain softened from downpour to steady drumming. We could finally go outside to assess the damage. With flashlights we examined the patio. The fallen branch had crushed about 6 feet of railing and cracked one of the deck supports. The damage was serious but not catastrophic. Nothing that couldn't be fixed. "Could be worse," I said, examining the broken support. "The main structure is intact. Just needs one new post and replacement railing." "How much?" "Maybe $3,000. Less if we can salvage some materials." Tony stood in the rain looking at the damage. She was soaked, her red jacket dark with water, but she didn't seem to notice. "You know what I'm realizing?" she said. "What?" "No one got hurt. The patio was empty when the branch fell. If this had happened during lunch service with customers sitting out here." She didn't finish the thought. "But it didn't. Everyone's safe. That's what matters, isn't it? Not the money or the setback or the repairs. Everyone's safe. The cafe is still standing. We can fix this." I watched her shift from despair to perspective in real time. This was who Tony was. Someone who found gratitude even in crisis. "We can definitely fix this," I agreed. She turned to me, rain streaming down her face. "Okay. Partnership. Real partnership. You invest money, I invest the business and expertise. We share decisions. We share success. Equal stakes." "You're sure?" "I'm sure that trying to do everything alone is exhausting. I'm sure that you've proven you care about this place as much as I do. I'm sure my mom would tell me to stop being stubborn and accept good help when it's offered." She held out her hand. "Partners?" I shook it. "Partners." We stood in the rain for another moment, sealing the agreement, then ran back inside laughing and soaked. "We need to change clothes," Tony said, water puddling around us. "I have spare uniforms in the back. Might be big on you but better than pneumonia." In the back office, she handed me a cafe t-shirt and sweatpants. We changed in separate corners like modest teenagers, which was ridiculous given we'd been dating for weeks, but somehow felt appropriate for the moment. When we emerged, both wearing bright red cafe uniforms, Tony started laughing. "We look like a couple." "We are a couple." "No, I mean we look like a matching set. Like someone dressed us intentionally to coordinate." She was right. Standing there in identical uniforms, damp hair, shared purpose, we looked like a team. We looked like partners in every sense. The power came back on around 9. We made fresh coffee and sat down to plan the repairs. "Jamie can fix this," I said, reviewing photos on my phone. "Probably have it done in 3 days. I'll call her first thing." Tony made notes. "And we need to hire a tree service to remove that branch properly and check the rest of the oak. Can't risk another fall." "I'll handle that." We worked together for another hour, dividing tasks, coordinating schedules. It felt different now that we were official partners. Not me helping her, but us solving problems together. Around 10 we finally locked up. The storm had passed completely, leaving clean air and clear stars. "Thank you," Tony said as we stood by my car. "For what?" "For staying. For helping me see the good side of this disaster. For being exactly who I needed you to be. That's what partners do." She kissed me then, soft and lingering. "Go home. Get dry. I'll see you tomorrow? 8 o'clock. I'll bring breakfast." "You always bring breakfast." "I know. I'm trying to maintain favorite person status." "Still tied with Mrs. Patterson?" "You're pulling ahead." The partnership thing sealed it. I drove home feeling oddly content despite the day's chaos. Yes, the patio was damaged. Yes, more money and time would be needed. But Tony was safe. The cafe was safe. And we were building something stronger than either of us could build alone. My phone buzzed as I pulled into my parking space. Text from Tony: "Thank you for choosing to build this with me." I replied, "Easiest choice I've ever made." That night, I fell asleep planning patio repairs and thinking about partnership and realizing I'd found something I'd been missing without knowing it. Not just romance or business success, but genuine partnership with someone who met challenges with grace and gratitude. The storm had tested us. We'd passed. Now we got to rebuild together, stronger than before. Friday morning, I arrived at the cafe to find a small crowd already gathering. Mrs. Patterson was there with a thermos of coffee. Tom Rodriguez, the retired carpenter who lived 2 blocks away, carried a tool belt. Sarah Chin, who ran the bookstore across the street, held a cash envelope. "What's all this?" Tony asked, emerging from inside. "We heard about the storm damage," Mrs. Patterson said. "Thought you could use some help." "And some money," Sarah added, holding out the envelope. "I passed the hat at the Business Owners Association meeting last night. We collected $1,200 for repairs." Tony's eyes filled with tears. "You didn't have to do this." "Of course we did," Tom said gruffly. "You've given free coffee to every broke college student in the neighborhood. You've hosted charity fundraisers. You've let community groups use your space for meetings. This is what community means. We take care of our own." I watched Tony struggle with accepting help, the same struggle she'd had with me. But this was different. This wasn't one person offering assistance. This was her community showing her she mattered. Thank you, she said finally, her voice thick. All of you. This means everything. Jamie arrived with her crew at 8, took one look at the gathering crowd and grinned. Looks like we've got volunteers. Tom stepped forward. 30 years as a Finnish carpenter before I retired. I can handle railing installation if you direct me. You're hired, Jamie said. Unpaid volunteer division. The morning transformed into a community work party. Jamie's crew handled the structural repairs. Tom and 2 other volunteers worked on railings. A group of college students Tony had helped over the years showed up to clean debris and move materials. Someone brought bagels. Someone else brought a portable speaker and played music. What should have been a somber repair job turned into something closer to a celebration. I worked alongside Jamie, replacing the damaged support post. Tony moved through the crowd serving coffee and snacks, thanking people, her face bright with gratitude and amazement. You've built something special here, Mrs. Patterson told me during a break. Not just the cafe. The community around it. That's all, Tony, I said. She creates space where people feel welcome. You're part of it now too. The way you stood by her through all that inspector nonsense. The way you're helping rebuild. People notice. By noon, the structural work was complete. The new support post was in place, properly braced and secured. Tom was halfway through installing new railing, working with the precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Tony pulled me aside. Can you believe this? All these people just showed up. You've been showing up for them for 3 years. They're returning the favor. I never expected anything in return. That's exactly why they're here. Around 2, a news van pulled up. Jennifer Rodriguez, the reporter who'd written the original article, emerged with a cameraman. Heard through the grapevine there was a community repair party happening, she said. Mind if we film a bit? This is a great follow-up story. Tony looked uncertain. I don't want to seem like I'm seeking attention. You're not seeking it. It's finding you because you did something newsworthy. Let people see what community support looks like. The resulting footage showed neighbors working together, business owners supporting each other, students helping someone who'd helped them. Jennifer interviewed Tom about why he'd volunteered, Mrs. Patterson about what the cafe meant to the neighborhood, Tony about accepting community support. A few months ago, I was terrified of losing this place, Tony said on camera. I thought I had to save it alone. What I've learned is that when you build something that matters to people, they show up to help protect it. That's the real success. Not revenue or popularity, but creating something people value enough to fight for. The segment aired that evening. By Saturday morning, more volunteers had arrived. More envelopes of cash donations. More offers of help. This is overwhelming, Tony admitted. I don't know how to accept all this. Say thank you and let people give what they want to give, I suggested. They need this as much as you do. Everyone wants to feel useful, to be part of something good. By Sunday afternoon, the patio was completely rebuilt. Not just repaired but improved. Tom had added decorative elements to the railing. Someone had donated weather-resistant cushions for the furniture. Sarah had brought plants for the corners. The space looked better than it had before the storm. Tony stood in the center of the finished patio, slowly turning to take it all in. I can't believe this happened in 3 days. Believe it, Jamie said. I've worked on projects with paid crews that took longer and looked worse. When people care, they do good work. That evening, after everyone had left and we'd cleaned up from the impromptu work party, Tony and I sat on the rebuilt patio watching the sun set. I need to tell you something, she said. Okay. I've been thinking about what you said. About partnership. About building this together. She turned to face me. I want to make it official. Legal partnership papers. Equal ownership. Shared decisions and shared profits. Tony, you don't have to do that. I know I don't have to. I want to. Because you've proven you're invested in this place's success as much as I am. Because these last few months have shown me I'm better with a partner than alone. Because. She paused, choosing words carefully. Because I'm falling in love with you and I want to build our future together. Not just romantically but in every way. My heart was racing. You're falling in love with me? Yes. Is that okay? It's more than okay. I pulled her close. I'm falling in love with you too. Have been since you rescued me from the worst date of my life. That was only a few months ago. Long enough to know. Long enough to be certain. We kissed as the sun set behind us, the community we'd built together stretching out around the cafe, solid and real and permanent. Over the next week, we worked with a lawyer to draw up partnership papers. 50-50 ownership split. Equal say in all business decisions. profit sharing and loss sharing both. The day we signed the papers felt more significant than I'd expected. This wasn't just business. This was commitment to building something lasting together. Congratulations, the lawyer said, handing us each copies. You're now official business partners. And life partners, Tony added, taking my hand. Also that, I agreed. We celebrated at the cafe that evening. Not a big party, just our inner circle. Jamie, Tom, Mrs. Patterson, Sarah, and a few other regulars who'd become friends. To partnership, Jamie toasted. May you build many more things together. To community, Mrs. Patterson added. May we all continue showing up for each other. To love, Tony said, raising her glass. In all its forms. We drank and laughed and told stories late into the evening. I looked around at the faces of people who'd become important to me through Tony, people who'd shown me what community actually meant. Later, after everyone had left, Tony and I walked through the cafe turning off lights. You know what I'm thinking? She said. What? We should expand. Use that back room we've been storing supplies in. Turn it into a proper community space. Place for small meetings, study groups, local artists to display work. That's a great idea. We could apply for a small business grant. The publicity from the inspector's story might help our chances. When did you start thinking about this? When I watched our community show up to rebuild the patio. I realized this cafe could be even more than it is. A real community hub. She turned to me. But only if you're in. Equal partners means equal say. I'm absolutely in. Let's build something bigger. We spent the next hour brainstorming, sketching ideas on napkins, making plans for the future. Not just the cafe's future, but our future together. Around midnight, Tony yawned. I should get home. Early morning tomorrow. I'll walk you to your car. Outside, under stars and streetlights, she kissed me goodnight. Thank you for choosing this. Choosing us. Best choice I ever made. As I drove home, I thought about how much had changed in a few months. I'd gone from lonely tech entrepreneur to cafe co-owner, from single to in love, from working alone to being part of something bigger. All because I'd said yes to sitting at a stranger's table. All because Tony had been brave enough to offer an invitation. All because we'd both chosen to keep building, keep trusting, keep showing up for each other. The storm had been a test. Community support had been the answer. Now we got to move forward, stronger together than either of us had been alone. I fell asleep that night planning expansions and thinking about love and realizing I'd found exactly what I'd been missing without knowing to look for it. Purpose and partnership. Community and commitment. 6 weeks after the storm, all repairs were complete, documented, and ready for final inspection. The patio looked better than ever. The cafe was thriving with increased customer support following all the publicity. Tony and I had settled into comfortable partnership, both professional and personal. But we still needed one more official stamp of approval. One more inspection to confirm everything was up to code and properly permitted. This time, the regular district inspector was coming. Not someone with an axe to grind, just someone doing their job. I'm not worried, Tony said Tuesday morning, though her hands fidgeted with a dish towel. You're totally worried. Little bit worried. What if they find something we missed? They won't. Jamie does perfect work. Everything's documented. We're fine. At 9 o'clock sharp, a woman in her 50s arrived carrying an official tablet and wearing a purple inspector's jacket. She introduced herself as Margaret Hayes, Senior Building Inspector. Ms. Wallace? Mr. Park? I'm here for the final inspection on storm damage repairs and follow-up compliance check. Thank you for coming, Tony said, shaking her hand. Everything's ready for your review. Margaret was thorough but pleasant. She walked the entire cafe, checking previous repair work and new construction with equal attention. She tested electrical connections, examined plumbing fixes, measured railing heights. On the patio, she spent considerable time reviewing the structure. Checked the footings, tested support posts, examined every joint and connection. Who did this work? She asked. Jamie Chen and her crew, I said. Plus Tom Rodriguez, a retired carpenter, volunteered on finishing work. It's excellent. Well above code requirements. She made notes on her tablet. The original inspection cited this patio for violations. Those have been more than adequately addressed. We showed her documentation for everything. Permits, receipts, photos of work in progress, engineer specifications. I'd created a binder 3 inches thick, organized by project and date. Margaret flipped through it with obvious approval. This is the most thorough documentation I've seen in 20 years of inspecting. Who organized this? That was me, I said. Architecture background. Old habits. Good habits. She continued examining the binder. I'm also aware of the previous inspector's conduct and the investigation that resulted. I want to assure you that was an aberration, not standard practice. We appreciate that, Tony said. Margaret completed her inspection in under 2 hours. She'd examined everything, found everything in perfect order. Now she stood at her tablet filling out final paperwork. Everything is in full compliance, she said. I'm marking this as passed inspection with commendation. That means your repairs and construction exceeded code requirements. It goes in your permanent building file. Commendation? Tony repeated. Rare but deserved. This cafe is safer and better built than most commercial properties I inspect. Margaret handed Tony an official certificate. Congratulations. You're fully approved. After Margaret left, Tony and I stood looking at the certificate like it was made of gold. We did it, she whispered. Actually did it. Everything's legal and perfect and approved. Told you we'd be fine. You were right. About everything. About fighting back, about fixing things properly, about community showing up, about partnership making us stronger. She set the certificate carefully on the counter. About us. What about us? That we work. That choosing to build something together makes both of us better. I pulled her close. We definitely work. We spent the rest of the day celebrating quietly. Serving customers, working together with the easy rhythm we'd developed, planning the next phase of expansion. Around 3, Tom stopped in for his regular coffee. Heard you passed inspection, he said. Knew you would. That patio's built better than my house. Thanks to your help, Tony said. Thanks to all of us helping each other. That's how it should work. He accepted his coffee. My granddaughter's graduating college next month. Can I rent your back room for a party? The back room isn't set up for events yet, Tony said. Then she paused, looking at me. Unless we speed up the expansion plans? How fast can we move? I asked. I've got free time next week, Tom offered. Could help with construction if you need it. And just like that, the next project began. Not because of crisis or deadline, but because we saw an opportunity and had the resources and community to make it happen. Over the next month, we transformed the back storage room into a community space. Knocked down one wall to open it up. Added French doors for access. Painted bright blue walls and installed warm lighting. Created a flexible space that could host meetings, parties, study groups, or art displays. Tom volunteered his time again. So did 3 other skilled workers from the community. Jamie supervised structural work. Everyone contributed what they could. You're teaching me something, I told Tony one evening as we painted the new space together. What's that? How to accept help. I spent years thinking I had to do everything alone. Build my company alone, solve problems alone, be successful alone. Watching you let people help, watching community show up, it's changed how I think about everything. It's not easy for me either, Tony admitted. I struggle with accepting help. But I'm learning that letting people give is a gift to them too. Everyone wants to matter, to contribute, to be part of something good. Your mom taught you that? She lived it. Never refused help, never made people feel small for offering. She'd say every act of kindness strengthens community twice. Once for receiving it, once for giving it. She sounds amazing. She was. She'd love all this. Tony gestured around the new space. She'd love you. Think so? No so. You're exactly who she'd have hoped I'd find. Someone who builds instead of tears down. Someone who shows up consistently. Someone who sees possibility in problems. We finished painting as sun set through the new French doors. The space glowed gold in the fading light, full of potential. Grand opening in 2 weeks? I suggested. Grand opening in 2 weeks, Tony agreed. Those 2 weeks were a blur of final preparations. We bought flexible furniture. Installed a small kitchenette for events. Created a scheduling system for community groups to reserve the space. Spread the word through our regular customers and local business networks. The grand opening fell on a Saturday. We'd invited everyone who'd helped over the past months. The cafe was packed by noon. Mrs. Patterson brought flowers. Sarah brought books for a lending library. Tom brought his granddaughter and introduced her to everyone. Jamie brought champagne. More and more people arrived until the cafe and new community space overflowed with celebration. I'd like to say something, Tony announced, climbing onto a chair so everyone could see her. The crowd quieted. 6 months ago, I was terrified I'd lose this cafe. One inspector with a grudge and a list of violations seemed like the end of everything I'd built. But something unexpected happened. I met someone who offered help without asking for anything in return. She looked at me. Devin showed up and kept showing up. He brought skills and resources and perspective when I needed all three. People applauded. I felt my face warm. But more importantly, Tony continued, all of you showed up. You brought support and skills and community. You proved that when you build something that matters to people, they'll fight to protect it. This cafe isn't mine anymore. It's ours. This community space isn't mine. It's ours. Everything we've built here belongs to all of us. The applause grew louder. Mrs. Patterson was crying. Tom was beaming. I watched Tony command the room with natural grace and realized how lucky I was to be building this life with her. So thank you, Tony finished, for showing up, for helping, for making this dream bigger and better than I could have imagined alone. Here's to community. To community, everyone echoed. The party lasted into evening. People toured the new space, signed up for future events, talked about how to use it. Local artists asked about displaying work. A yoga instructor inquired about teaching classes. A teacher wanted to host after-school tutoring. By closing time, the calendar for the community space was already half full for the next 3 months. Did you imagine it would take off like this? I asked Tony as we cleaned up empty cups and plates. Honestly? No. I hoped, but I didn't dare believe. She surveyed the room with satisfaction. This is what I wanted when I first dreamed of opening a cafe. Not just selling coffee, but creating space where community happens. Your mom would be proud. She would. And she'd probably have already met everyone here and learned their life stories. She was like that. Instant connections with everyone. You're like that too. Am I? Absolutely. Look at how many people showed up today. They're not here for coffee. They're here for you, for what you've created, for the space you hold for them. Tony was quiet for a moment. You know what's weird? I spent so long afraid of failure. Afraid the cafe wouldn't work, wouldn't matter, wouldn't survive. Now that we've passed every test and come out stronger, I'm realizing I was afraid of the wrong thing. What should you have been afraid of? Success. Of what happens when the dream actually works. Of having to maintain it and grow it and live up to people's expectations. That's a better problem to have. Much better. She took my hand. And easier to handle with a partner. We finished cleaning and locked up. Standing outside under stars, looking at our cafe with its expanded community space, everything felt right. Solid. Real. Permanent. Thank you for sitting at my table that night, Tony said. Thank you for inviting me. Think we would have found each other without your terrible date? Probably not. Remind me to thank Shauna if I ever see her. Please don't. I like our origin story better as is. We went home separately that night, but with plans to make that temporary. We'd been discussing moving in together, finding a place close to the cafe where we could build our life together. The inspector nightmare that had brought us together was long past. But what we'd built from it was just beginning. 3 months after the grand opening of the community space, the cafe was thriving beyond any projection I'd imagined. Morning regulars packed the main room. The community space hosted events most evenings. Tony had hired 2 more part-time employees to keep up with demand. Financially, we turned a corner. The cafe was profitable. Tony was finally building savings instead of just covering expenses. We'd started discussing opening a second location someday. But something felt off. Tony seemed distant, distracted. She'd leave the cafe early some evenings without explanation. She'd have whispered phone conversations that stopped when I entered the room. I told myself I was being paranoid. We were closer than ever. We'd moved into an apartment together last month. We were building a life and business together. There was no reason to worry. But the distance remained. Tuesday evening, I stayed late finishing inventory. Around 8, I realized Tony had left without saying goodbye. Her car was gone from the parking lot. My phone buzzed with a text. Can you close up tonight? Something I need to handle. Love you. Love you. She'd started saying that a month ago. I'd said it back. We meant it. So why did I feel uneasy? Over the next week, the pattern continued. Tony would disappear for hours with vague explanations. She'd receive mysterious packages she'd quickly hide away. She was planning something, but what? Friday night, I decided to ask directly. We were at home, Tony at her laptop, me reviewing next week's supply orders. Is everything okay? I said. She looked up, surprised. Of course. Why? You've been distracted lately. Secretive. If something's wrong, I want to help. Nothing's wrong. But she closed her laptop quickly. Too quickly. Tony, we're partners. In everything. You can tell me if there's a problem. She bit her lip, considering. What if there's not a problem? What if I'm planning something good? Like what? Like a surprise. That I've been working on for 2 months. That's almost ready. She smiled mysteriously. Can you trust me until next week? Of course I trust you. Then trust that this secretive behavior has a good reason. I let it go, though my curiosity was intense. What could she be planning that required this much secrecy? Monday morning, Tony told me not to come to the cafe until noon. Why? I asked. Because I'm asking. Please, trust me. So I stayed home, pacing, wondering, checking my phone every 5 minutes. At 11:45, I couldn't wait any longer. I drove to the cafe. The main lights were off, but I could see movement inside. I unlocked the door with my key and entered. The cafe had been transformed. Blueprints covered every table. On the main wall hung a huge poster showing architectural renderings of an expanded cafe. A second-story addition, more community space, outdoor dining area, full commercial kitchen. Tony stood in the center of it all wearing a bright red dress, her hair done up formally, surrounded by plans and possibilities. You're early, she said, but she was smiling. What is all this? This is our future. If you want it. She gestured around. I've been working with architects and city planners and loan officers for 2 months, planning an expansion that would turn our cafe into a real community center. I walked slowly around the room, examining plans. They were detailed, professional, ambitious. The expansion would triple our space, add commercial-grade kitchen equipment, create proper event facilities. This would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, I said. $500,000 actually. I've been approved for a small business loan. The publicity from the inspector story helped our application. The community letters of support helped even more. She moved to stand beside me. But I'm not doing this without you. We're partners. Equal say in all business decisions, remember? You want to expand this much? I want to build something lasting. Something bigger than a cafe. A real community hub where people gather, connect, learn, celebrate. A place my mom would have loved. She turned to face me fully. But only if you're in. Only if you want to build this with me. I looked at the plans, at the vision she'd created, at the woman who'd somehow become my entire world. There's something else, Tony said, moving to the counter. She picked up a small velvet box. My heart started racing. This isn't a proposal, she said quickly. Not that kind of proposal. But it is a question. She opened the box. Inside was a brass key engraved with both our initials intertwined. This is the master key to our cafe, she said. But it's also symbolic. I'm asking if you'll build the future with me. Not just the business expansion, but everything. A life together. A family someday. All of it. This is me saying I choose you, I choose us, I choose what we're building together. For the long term. For forever. I couldn't speak. The plans, the key, the question underlying everything. This wasn't just about cafe expansion. This was about life commitment. I know I'm supposed to wait for you to propose, Tony continued, her voice wavering slightly. But I'm not good at waiting. And my mom taught me that when you know what you want, you speak up. So I'm speaking up. I want this expansion. I want this life. I want you. In business and in life. As my partner in every sense. That sounds a lot like a proposal, I managed. It's an offer. To build the future together. To make official what we already know. That we're better together than apart. I took the key from the box. Bing Groff. NG was beautiful, our initials woven together in an intricate design. When did you plan all this? I asked. Started planning the day after we signed partnership papers. I realized that if we were going to build something together, we should build something really worth building. Not just a small cafe, but something that would outlast both of us. A legacy. You've been planning our legacy? Someone has to. She smiled. Is that okay? Am I moving too fast? I pulled her close. You're moving exactly the right speed. Yes. Yes to what, specifically? The expansion, the life commitment, or the key? All of it. Yes to everything. Yes to building something permanent. Yes to partnership in every form. Yes to you. Tony's eyes filled with tears. You mean it? I mean it. Let's expand the cafe. Let's build a community center. Let's create something that outlasts us. And yes, let's do it together. For the long term. For forever. She kissed me then, long and certain, sealing the agreement. When we broke apart, I looked around at the plans covering every surface. You really think we can do this? I think we can do anything together. These last months have proven that. Every crisis we've faced, We've faced together and come out stronger. This isn't a crisis though. This is a choice. The best things are choices. She showed me detailed plans for the expansion. Ground floor stays mostly the same, but we add a second story. More community space, proper commercial kitchen, office area, storage. Outside we expand the patio and add gardens. When would this happen? Construction would start in 6 months if we move forward. Take about a year to complete. We'd stay open during most of it, just like we did with repairs. I examined the plans more closely. They were well thought out, practical but ambitious. The kind of project that could transform the cafe into something truly special. I'm in, I said. Completely in. Let's build this. Tony sagged with relief. I was so afraid you'd think it was too much. Too big. Too ambitious. It's ambitious, but we've proven we can handle ambitious. She showed me the rest of her planning. Loan details, timeline, contractor bids, projected revenue. She'd thought of everything, planned for every contingency. You've been working so hard on this, I said, while still running the cafe full-time. I wanted it to be perfect before presenting it. Wanted to show you I'm serious about building something lasting together. I never doubted that. I know. But I needed to prove it to myself. That I could plan something this big. That I deserved a partner like you. You deserve everything good, I said firmly. Never doubt that. We spent the rest of the day going over plans, making notes, discussing modifications. Around 5, Mrs. Patterson knocked on the locked door. We let her in. I saw lights, she said. Is everything all right? Everything's perfect, Tony said, beaming. Come see. We're expanding. Mrs. Patterson examined the plans with growing excitement. This is wonderful. The community has needed something like this for years. When you build this, can I volunteer? Help with programs and events. We'd love that, I said. More people arrived as word spread. Tom, Sarah, Jamie, other regulars. Everyone examined the plans with excitement. Everyone offered support, skills, connections to make it happen. By evening, we had a list of 20 volunteers ready to help however they could. The community that had shown up to rebuild a patio was showing up again to build something even bigger. This is really happening, Tony said as we finally locked up for the night. This is really happening. We drove home together, planning and dreaming and building the future in conversation. That night, lying in bed, Tony said, "Thank you for saying yes. To all of it. Thank you for asking. For choosing to build this with me. No other choice I'd rather make." Over the next weeks, we moved forward with expansion plans. Met with architects and contractors. Reviewed financing details. Started the permitting process. It was overwhelming, exciting, terrifying in the best way. But we faced it together just like we'd faced everything else. One evening, reviewing structural plans, I realized something. You know what's different about this project? What? Tony asked. We're not building it because we have to. Not because of crisis or deadline or someone forcing us. We're building it because we want to. Because we're choosing to create something bigger and better. Is that a good different? The best different. Means we're past just surviving. Now we're actually thriving. She leaned against me, looking at plans that represented our future. Past surviving. I like the sound of that. Me too. We were past crisis and into choosing. Past reacting and into creating. Past finding each other by accident and into building a life together on purpose. The girl at the next table had become the partner of a lifetime. And together we were building something that would last. 6 months later, construction on the expansion began. Just like during the original repairs, the cafe stayed open through the chaos. Customers had become so invested in our story that watching the expansion happen was entertainment in itself. You're building a legacy, Mrs. Patterson said one morning watching contractors frame the second-story addition through the cafe windows. We're building what the community needs, Tony corrected gently. Same thing, Mrs. Patterson smiled. The construction took exactly 11 months, 3 weeks and 2 days. I know because Tony counted every one. She'd grown visibly anxious as completion approached, worried something would go wrong at the last minute. Nothing's going to go wrong, I assured her repeatedly. We've planned everything perfectly. Famous last words. But nothing did go wrong. The construction finished on schedule and under budget. The final inspection passed without a single citation. Everything came together exactly as we'd envisioned. The night before the grand reopening, Tony and I stood in the transformed cafe. The main floor retained its original cozy feel but with updated equipment and expanded seating. The second story held 3 separate community spaces that could be used simultaneously or opened into one large room. The new commercial kitchen gleamed with professional equipment. Outside, the expanded patio and gardens created a peaceful outdoor sanctuary. "It's perfect," Tony whispered. "Better than I imagined. It's exactly what you designed. We designed. Together." She took my hand. "None of this would exist without you. Your investment, your support, your partnership. You made this possible. We made this possible. That's how partnership works." The grand reopening was scheduled for Saturday. Friday night, unable to sleep from excitement, I found myself alone in the new space around midnight. I walked through each room, remembering everything that had brought us here. A terrible blind date that led to an invitation. An inspection crisis that revealed hidden problems. Storm damage that brought community support. Each challenge had pushed us to build something stronger. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Tony appeared wearing pajamas and a bright blue robe. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked. "Too much excitement." She joined me in the main community room. Through the windows we could see the city lights stretching out below us. "I've been thinking," she said, "about my mom. About how she'd react to all this. What do you think she'd say?" "She'd probably cry. Then she'd make sure we had proper insurance and a succession plan." Tony laughed softly. She was practical like that. Big dreams but always thinking about protecting them. Smart woman. The smartest. Tony was quiet for a moment. "I wish she could see this. See what her dream became." "Maybe she can," I said. "If you believe in that sort of thing." "Do you?" "I believe that love doesn't stop existing just because someone's gone. I believe the best parts of people live on in what they built and who they loved and the dreams they passed forward." I gestured around. "Your mom's here. In every part of this. In the community space that welcomes everyone. In the cafe that feeds people more than just coffee. In you, carrying forward what she taught you." Tony's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "That was really beautiful. Your mom's influence. You taught me how to see it." We sat in comfortable silence, preparing ourselves for tomorrow's celebration. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear. Perfect weather for a grand opening. We'd invited everyone who'd been part of our journey. The Inspector General's office sent a representative. The mayor's office sent congratulations. Jennifer Rodriguez brought a camera crew for another follow-up story. By 10 o'clock, the line to enter stretched around the block. "This is insane," Tony said, peeking through the windows. "This is success," I corrected. "You built something people value. Of course they're showing up." We opened the doors at 11. The crowd flooded in, filling every space with excited energy. People toured the community rooms, admired the commercial kitchen, explored the gardens. The espresso machine we'd splurged on produced perfect drinks at impressive speed. Tom gave an impromptu speech about watching us rebuild after the storm. Sarah announced that her bookstore was partnering with us to create a community library in one of the upstairs rooms. Mrs. Patterson presented us with a hand-embroidered banner reading Wallace's Community Center. Building together since 2024. Around 2, the mayor arrived for an official ribbon-cutting ceremony. Media cameras captured the moment. Tony and I stood together with oversized scissors, surrounded by everyone who'd helped make this possible. "This community center represents the best of what we can accomplish together," the mayor said in her speech. "When people support each other, invest in each other, build together, amazing things happen." Tony Wallace and Devon Park have created something truly special here. Not just a business but a gathering place, a support system, a model for what community can be. The ribbon fell away. People cheered. Tony grabbed my hand and squeezed tight. "We did it," she whispered. "You did it? I just helped." "No. We did it. Together. That's the whole point." The celebration continued all afternoon. We gave tours, answered questions, scheduled future events. The upstairs calendar filled completely for the next 2 months. Local organizations reserved space for meetings. Artists signed up to display work. Teachers planned after-school programs. By closing time, we were exhausted and exhilarated in equal measure. "I can't believe this is real," Tony said as we locked up. "Believe it? You built this. You made it real." "We built this." "Fair enough. We built this." We went home and collapsed on the couch, too tired to even change clothes. "You know what's amazing?" Tony said. "A year ago I was terrified of losing my small cafe. Now we have a community center that's going to serve hundreds of people. How did that happen? You fought for what mattered. You accepted help when it was offered. You kept building even when it was hard. You forgot the most important part. What's that? I met you. That terrible blind date led to the best thing that ever happened to me. I pulled her close. Same. Best worst date of my life. We dozed off there, too content and exhausted to move. Around midnight, Tony's phone buzzed. She checked it sleepily. The article is live, she said. Jennifer's follow-up story. We read it together on her phone. From crisis to community, how one cafe owner built something lasting. The article traced our entire journey from the inspector harassment to the storm damage to community support to the expansion. It was fair, detailed, and inspiring. You're going to be famous, I said. We're going to be famous. You're in half these photos. Minor character in your story. Lead character in our story. She kissed me softly. That's the one that matters. Over the next weeks, the community center became exactly what we'd hoped. Meeting space for local groups. Study area for students. Event venue for celebrations. Art gallery for local creators. The cafe remained central, but now it was part of something bigger. One evening, 3 months after opening, Tony and I were reviewing numbers in our upstairs office. We're profitable beyond projections, I said, looking at the spreadsheet. We'll pay off the expansion loan 2 years early at this rate. That's good, right? That's excellent. It means we have options. I turned to face her. We could invest in a second location. Or expand programs here. Or bank savings for future opportunities. What do you want? Tony was quiet, thinking. I want to keep growing what we have here. Make it better and more accessible. Maybe add scholarships so community programs are free for people who can't afford them. Turn this into something truly for everyone. I love that idea. But I also want something else. She looked at me seriously. I want to make us official. Not just business partners. Not just people living together. Actually married. Committed for life. Building everything together legally and emotionally and permanently. My heart rate increased. Are you proposing? Not yet. I'm asking if you'd say yes if I did propose. Theoretically. Theoretically, I'd say yes immediately. Good to know. She grinned. Filing that information away for future reference. 2 months later, on the 1-year anniversary of our cafe partnership, Tony proposed properly. She'd arranged a private dinner in the upstairs community space. Candles everywhere. Our closest friends hiding in the kitchen ready to celebrate. And a ring that perfectly matched my style. Devon Park, she said, getting down on one knee in front of the windows overlooking the city. You showed up when I needed help most. You stayed when things got hard. You built this dream with me when you could have been doing anything else. You're my best friend, my partner, my favorite person. Will you marry me? I didn't even pretend to think about it. Yes. Absolutely yes. Forever yes. Our friends burst out from the kitchen cheering. Champagne appeared. Music played. We celebrated surrounded by community in the space we'd built together. The wedding happened 6 months later. Small ceremony in the cafe garden. Mrs. Patterson officiated, having gotten ordained specifically for this purpose. Tom walked Tony down the aisle. Sarah held the rings. Jamie gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry simultaneously. To showing up, Jamie said, raising her glass. To building together. To turning crisis into community. To love that chooses to stay and keep building even when it's hard. To Tony and Devon, who proved that the best things happen when you say yes to strangers at the next table. To saying yes, everyone echoed. We honeymooned for 2 weeks, leaving the cafe in capable hands. When we returned, tanned and relaxed and more in love than ever, nothing had burned down. The community center had run smoothly. Our staff had handled everything perfectly. This is what success looks like, Tony said, reviewing reports from our absence. Building something that doesn't require us to be present every second. Creating systems and teams that work. Your mom would be proud. She really would be. That evening, closing up together, we stood in the cafe where everything had started. The space that had been saved from closure, rebuilt after damage, expanded into something bigger. The place where we'd met, partnered, fell in love, built a life. You know what I'm realizing? Tony said. What? That terrible blind date was the best thing that ever happened to me. If Shauna had been interesting, if that date had gone well, I never would have invited you to sit at my table. We never would have met. Remind me to send her a thank you card. Please don't. I like our story better with her as the villain we escaped. We laughed, locked up, went home to the life we'd built together. A life that started with an invitation and a choice and kept building through every challenge that followed. Years later, people would ask how we made it work. How we built a successful business and a strong marriage and a thriving community center all at once. The answer was always the same. We showed up for each other. We accepted help when it was offered. We kept building even when it was hard. We chose partnership and trust and kindness and love. We chose to keep saying yes. To opportunities. To challenges. To each other. To building something bigger than either of us could build alone. The girl at the next table had invited me to sit down. I'd said yes. That single choice had become a life. That single invitation had become everything. And together we built something that would last long after we were gone. Something built on love and community and the simple power of choosing to show up for each other. Every single day. Forever.